much is your agency making right now annually?
In profit, we do pretty consistently about like 50, 60K a month in profit. And so rev wise, that's like hovers between 80 to like 110, 120K per month on it. It's like just over the million. I always had in the back of my mind that like plan A was be a business owner, and I never wanted to work for someone. Pirated the first version of the email course because I literally had no money to my name and couldn't afford anything. I didn't have like the crazy hunger or need. I was enjoying living the uni lifestyle.
Right.
I was in a share house. I'd gone from literally having zero money in my bank account at the end of every week to having maybe like 20K in savings. I'm just gonna follow this advice blindly. I wasn't spending money on anything. It was just like, all right, let's just work on the business. And so everyone that is in the beginning stages, this is like still what I recommend everyone doing. Like just the most predictable, surefire way to get your first 7 to 10 paying clients. And it's literally just cold call to in-person meetings.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of our podcast. Today we have a very special guest on. He is the owner of Reliable Leads, a very, very successful real estate social media marketing company. But more importantly, he has been my mentor for the past year or so. And we just wanted to have a chat to see if we can offer some mentorship to you guys and catch up and talk about business. So here we have Liam on the podcast. Liam Casey,
Absolutely.
welcome on board.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. You just got back from Europe, right?
Just got back from Europe. Just got engaged, which is super, super exciting. Had an awesome trip. That was like my first proper trip to Europe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'd been to Greece before, but not what I would. Yeah, obviously that's Europe, but not what I would think about like a proper Europe trip, seeing main European countries. So
how long did you go for?
Just over 3 weeks. It was like 3.5 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And you did London, Paris, Italy?
Yeah, London, Paris. Then we went to Florence. Then we drove out to Tuscany, and then did like about 4 days in Rome.
Right.
Yeah.
Did she knew it was coming?
I don't think so. I mean, we'd been together for 7 years, so it was like very much overdue. And she was expecting it at some point, but she was definitely still caught off guard.
Was she like hinting at it?
Like for years. Yeah. So yeah, had to make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
Put a ring on it.
Yeah, and do you feel like at this point, because you've started your agency in 2018, so that's your first foray into online money making and doing business, right? So with that, did you want to wait till this long until you were very comfortable with the business, or was it just like a random thing? You're like, yeah, now it's about time.
It was completely separate from like my own perspective of where my business was at for that decision. I think it was just a bit of an age thing as well, and also just because we've been in a relationship for quite a while.
How old are you now?
25.
25, right.
Yeah, and so we got together when we were 18, and like, I don't know, when you're in a relationship that young, like one of the things that's in the back of your mind is like, we're young, like you're like just not wanting to take any, like, those decisions are kind of like, buying a house, getting a mortgage, like settling, not like settling down, but it's, I don't know, I feel like for me anyway, like mid-20s, it's kind of like, oh, like, should start taking things a little bit more seriously.
Yeah,
now.
like, 30's on the clock.
And it's like when you're in early 20s, 18, 19, it's like, over time, like the pressure's not on in any senses, but now it's kind of that general mindset's kind of creeping in of like, okay, it's like now, I've done enough just playing things pretty chill and just just living a really good lifestyle, and I wouldn't say not taking the business seriously, but like it's definitely a different mentality and a different mindset of like more treating my entrepreneurial career like a lifestyle business, and like treating it like it's my personal cash cow versus like thinking about the next 20, 30 years, building a life, building a family, and taking things a bit more seriously.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
And speaking of your business and being a lifestyle business, let's just give the people a little rundown of where you're at now.
Yeah.
So you're 25 years old, and we're right now living in a time and an economy where you're sort of looking at like, 100K annually, that's a good salary. Like that's what a lot of people are aiming for, is like the 100K annual mark.
Yeah.
How much is your agency making right now annually?
In profit, we do pretty consistently about like 50, 60K a month in profit. And so rev wise, that's like hovers between 80 to like 110, 120K per month on a
Right.
good versus bad month. And then there's obviously revenue from coaching in the background as well, which is
separate stuff, which we'll come to later.
To that,
Yeah,
but that's
so
also
the agency
very
itself
profitable too.
is on average doing 110 to 120K per month.
Yeah, it fluctuates from like 80 to 120. So definitely not doing like 120 back to back every single month, but
Yeah.
fluctuates between that.
That's insane, bro. So
Yeah, it's like just over the million a year run rate, and I've been there consistently for probably like past 2 years. Before that, been very healthy at like mid to high multi six figures a year, but have always kept it very, very lean and very profitable.
yeah, that's another
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, you have kept it very, very lean.
Yeah.
But let's go all the way back to 2018 when you were studying at UQ, right?
Yeah.
So I'm also a UQ alumni. Shout out to UQ. So what were you studying? How did you? What was your thoughts going into Brisbane?
Yeah, my thoughts going into uni, I guess before starting uni, my first experience getting into entrepreneurship in general was I did this random like weekend event at the University of New South Wales where they had promoted, it was called like Initiate 48, and essentially it's like a weekend startup entrepreneurship event where you'd come in, you'd just like get paired in a random group of people, you had to come up with an idea for a startup, pitch it in front of a panel of judges, and then they would pick winners, and then we ended up winning that, and then the next steps was UNSW had this entrepreneurship competition called the Peter Farrell Cup, where you were competing against university students, and I was still in year 12, and we had this random like startup idea for this. It was called CarSpot, and it was like the premise was a solution for when you lose your car in like big parking centers like shopping malls or airports and things like that, and then it turned into this whole like indoor location solution for just like finding your way around shopping centers and airports. And then that was like the first ever like serious business entrepreneurship thing that I did. That kind of, and before that I wasn't never like dramatically that good at school either, so it was like the first kind of validation or like thing that I achieved well at outside that was like rewarded for my talents, and that kind of gave me confidence to kind of go down and pursue that path more seriously.
Right.
But going to uni, I didn't have any clear vision of exactly what business I wanted to get into whatsoever, but I always had in the back of my mind that like plan A was be a business owner, and I never wanted to work for someone, and I was already very clear on that. And I don't know why that was. Like I had those thoughts from very early on. Both my parents are business owners, so I feel like that kind of definitely planted the seed. But yeah, I just always had that mentality in the back of my mind that I want to be rewarded directly for what the value that I'm producing in the world. And I felt like if I was ever someone else's boss, that I'm always like, all the work that I'm doing is always not being valued at what I'm actually producing. And so I did a degree in business. It was just a general business management degree, and I majored in advertising and international business. And going into uni, I'd actually planned on, I wanted marketing to be like my major and like the main thing that I did. But my initial plan was to go and do my master's after I did my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
And the way that they structured the degrees at UQ is you couldn't major in your bachelor's in something that you were going to do a master's in. And so I forfeited doing marketing in my degree when that was like actually the thing I'd intended on doing.
Oh, okay.
And by the time I finished, had gone down the path of starting an agency, and was like, I'm not going back to uni at all.
Right.
Like that. And then I never actually did any marketing other than just the normal compulsory classes. So yeah, that's what I ended up with. That was
the plan.
So my official piece of paper is Bachelor of Business Management, majoring in advertising and international business.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So, and it was during that period when you were at uni that you sort of discovered the SMMA space.
Yeah, so
talk us through that.
I graduated high school 2016, went straight into uni 2017, and then 2018 was when I went down the make money online rabbit hole and did my first agency course. It was an E-Man course. I first came across E-Man when he literally had 8 or 12,000 subscribers.
Yeah, wow. Well,
And
E-Man course back then, it's like, that's like when he started, right?
yeah, it was his first. It was like 6-figure SMMA. It was
Oh,
it
wow,
was
okay.
literally his very first program. And yeah, like I just remember like chatting with him before he'd even become anything big or
crazy.
launch anything. And full transparency, I pirated the first version of the E-Man's course because I literally had no money to my name and couldn't afford anything. So it was literally my only choice. Was like, where am I going to get access to this thing? But yeah, it was like mid 2018 was like when I would consider first, like that I'd gone through all the different business models, typical drop shipping, Amazon FBA, doing affiliate marketing, doing copywriting, like all these, funnel building, ClickFunnels world. And because I was already like interested in marketing, doing the marketing agency business model was just like the one that made the most sense to me, just like sell a service, recurring revenue. And that was just what clicked and made. And I feel like everyone that goes into the make money online space, like everyone's different, everyone has a different brain. And I think like that's the best place to start, is kind of just educating yourself on all the different options for the different business models. And then naturally you'll find one that kind of just clicks and makes sense with you and you understand the business model. And that was when the first light bulbs started going off for me. It's just like discovering the marketing agency business model. That was kind of right when, Ty Lopez was
Here in My
taking over
Garage,
with
that video?
with the Here in My Garage ad.
Yeah.
And he essentially invented SMMA, like obviously he didn't invent marketing agencies, but he invented the biz op of starting a marketing agency. And like, that's definitely what, E-Man was initially inspired from as well. And then, the first courses that I went through kind of brought up real estate as a niche. And again, that kind of just made sense to me as well, because it was high ticket, the value of the transactions made sense. It felt like, I could justify charging the prices that I wanted to charge. And then I just stuck with that from the get-go, and I'm still doing it here, like 6-7 years later.
Before that, so you mentioned that you tried out like copywriting and different things like that.
Yeah.
Did you actually like pitch that to clients, or were you just looking at what it was like?
Just like going down YouTube rabbit holes and educating myself on different business models. The only things that I'd actually like tried was some versions of drop shipping and e-com, or like buying products and trying to sell them in person at the markets and things like that, or just flipping stuff. Like I always fell into doing random entrepreneurial things. Like one thing that I did for a bit while at uni was flipping concert tickets and reselling concert tickets, because any time that there was a festival that came up that I wanted to go to, I didn't have any money to afford it, and I was like, I flipped tickets to to be able to afford things, but just random things like that. But the marketing agency was the first thing that I like went through an entire course, like really took it seriously. It was like, this is a thing that I'm actually going to try.
Right.
And then from when I started that and was taking it more seriously, it was about 6 months from like taking the first course until I actually got my first paying client. And then after that, then it snowballed relatively quickly. And before graduating, because I was at uni, my parents were paying me like they were paying me like $350 a week, and that had to cover my rent and living expenses. So I was living off $350 a week throughout all of uni, and I was living uni lifestyle. I was in no rush to be like, I didn't have like the crazy hunger or need. I was enjoying living the uni lifestyle.
Right.
I was in a share house with some friends, and it was fun. And we were drinking way too much, just partying, living typical uni life. And so it wasn't until like towards the end of final year of uni where I was like, okay, like, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to take this thing a bit more seriously? Am I going to scale this up? Am I going to look for a job when I'm leaving? Like, what's like, because those are kind of your only two options. It's either, you get it to a point where you can confidently, like, this is going to sustain my life, and I'm just going to go all in, or I'm going to look for something on the side as well to be a bit less risky. And I managed to get it up to a point where it was like I was just running everything, and I was doing like 10-12k a month, which like at the time, and it was just me, one VA, it was like 90% profit. That was great. This is
when you were like almost graduated college.
This was like 6 months before graduating.
Oh wow, okay.
And that allowed me to save up like a decent amount of money, only like something like, I'd gone from literally having zero money in my bank account at the end of every week to having maybe like 20k in savings. And I was like, okay, like, if I if I rent a place, like I can survive for at least like 6 months living the way that I'm living right now, and can figure most things out in 6 months. So yeah, then I ended up just graduating and going all in on the agency when I finished, and that was coincidentally right when COVID essentially started. Graduated December 2019. 2020, COVID was just starting to come in.
Right.
And then we moved out of my share house, moved into a place with Jasmine, now our fiance, and Brisbane was on lockdown for like the entire of that year pretty much, and so it was kind of a good year I didn't have any options other than to work on the business. It was like, can't travel, you can walk around in your suburb, and that's about it. Couldn't travel, couldn't go out to eat very much, and so it wasn't spending money on anything. It was just like, all right, let's just work on the business, and so that became the singular focus. And coincidentally, kind of 2021 ended up being a very good year for pretty much everyone's business, because the government was printing monopoly money. Everyone ended up being very cashed up. Crypto was going crazy, made heaps of money in crypto, and e-com was going nuts. Real estate agents were making heaps of money, and 2021 ended up being just a really, really good year in business, and kind of it was a good timing for being in the agency business model. And 2021, 2022 was like, some of the best years profit-wise for the business. And that kind of set me up for the foundations of doing everything that I'm doing now.
Awesome. And let's just roll back a little bit to that point where you've now taken the course and now you're like, fine, all right, I'm going to do this. How did you actually land your first client? What did it feel like to get that first paycheck? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, 100%. And this strategy is like on everyone that is in the beginning stages. This is like still what I recommend everyone doing. Like people that have recently joined the program that are anything below 10K per month and just trying to get their first few paying clients. Like this is exactly what I tell them to do, because it's just the most predictable, surefire way to get your first 7 to 10 paying clients. And it's literally just cold call to in-person meetings, because like every course out there teaches you how to do all of these. That they teach client acquisition methods that are designed to be like more sustainable, scalable, and like automated more long term, doing mass scale outreach with VAs or cold emails or different organic content strategies and all these things. And they end up getting really competitive, they end up getting really saturated, and it's especially the more popular selling digital services has become. When you're a beginner, you require more authority, trust, and expertise to get your foot in the door with serious business owners that would actually be good clients.
Yeah.
And so all I did to start out with was I just opened up a Google Doc, opened up Google Maps, I made a list of 50 principals and owners of real estate agencies that were no more than 45 minutes driving distance from me, and then I just started calling them. And that first day, the day that I started cold calling, the first person that I called said yes to an in-person meeting that day. Mm-hmm. And so then I it was in Kingscliff, which is my hometown, walked down and had my sales script printed out on a piece of paper.
Nice,
I'd never done any sales ever. And I was literally reading through the sales questions in my first meeting, what in person would have. I don't know how they weren't laughing at me. I wish that was recorded, because it would have looked like an absolute joke. But they ended up being my first paying client. Yeah, that was the first, and I charged $1,000 a month. And
this was in
2018.
2018, yeah.
And they went for it, and that was the first, because I feel everyone knows, if you're just starting the agency space, or if you've been in it for a bit, the feeling of getting your first paying client where you just see that money hit your account, where it's wow, your first money that you make as a business owner that didn't come from, an hourly wage or whatever, just is a huge light bulb. We're okay, I just came up with this idea, I just presented this to someone and they gave me money, and now it's in my account. It's okay, if I can do that once, I could probably do it a few more times.
Right.
And so, and then I just repeated that, and I just kept doing cold call, in-person meeting, cold call, in-person meeting. And my mentality of why that works and how I explain it to coaching clients now is essentially whenever you're in the earlier stages of your business, you want to do as much as possible to just stack the odds in your favor. And there's so many things that you can do to stack the odds in your favor that are within your control. Because when you're starting out in any business, you're often focused and fixating on all the things that are stacked against you, all the things that are outside of your control. You don't have case studies, you don't have testimonials, you don't have authority, you don't have experience selling to that industry. But what you do have is with cold calls to in-person meetings is you've got the immediate rapport and trust that's built just by being another local person. And especially local businesses, the only way that they do business is in person with people that they've met in person, and people like to do business with people that live locally to them, and there's just a lot more a sense of trust, because like there's like kind of a dynamic in the background with if you only meet someone digitally, there's not as much of an obligation to ever have a connection or relationship to that person, and they can just log off one day and you can never hear from them, and there's that slight fear that they are going to scam you and run off with your money. Whereas if you can show your face, you can ask for an in-person meeting, you go to their office, like everyone, like a universal language of trust and respect is effort. Like if you can show effort, then people respect that. And also especially when you're younger, like other older business owners definitely like the dynamic of giving like a young entrepreneur a go and a shot. And so, if you're calling up people like and cold calling, like that's effort in and of itself. Other business owners respect that. If you're going out to their office, and it's way harder to say no to someone in like an in-person meeting in an in-person context. And to this day, I've never not closed an in-person meeting, and I was nowhere near a whiz at sales whatsoever. And I'm still not amazing at sales. I'm decent, but there's people that are very, very, very good at sales. So that's what I would recommend doing if you're starting in any B2B service, is just do cold calls to in-person meetings with local business owners, and that will get you first 7 to 10 paying clients, and then just snowball it from there and use that as leverage.
Yeah, and even I remember I never actually cold called when I started like running my agency, and I did really well in in-person meetings. I knew that, so I'm like, okay, I love being with people, and like I'm a people's person, but I'm like, why am I so scared of getting on the phone? Because even when people would book in appointments with me, and for me to just call them and like confirm the time, it was like I was freaking out
scary,
at the start.
Yeah, it's just,
and I was wondering why they asked for this, and I'm still like freaking out. So you going out and just giving like cold calling people that you've never talked to before. So with these people, like, were you nervous, and how did you get over it?
I was very nervous, and I've always been definitely more of an introvert, and I don't know, I was just like, I kind of just got into a mindset of like the first courses that I went through where I was like, I'm just going to follow this advice blindly and just put my thoughts and inhibitions aside. And I think it's almost that naivety when you're in the early stages of a business, where because you don't know what you don't know and you haven't learned that much, that you just kind of take people's advice at face value, and you're like, if they're telling me this is what to do, then this must be right, and this must be what you do. And that's just what it said to do in the first courses. So I was like, fuck it, like, yeah, I don't want to do this, and this is scary, but like, this must work. I want to make money. I want to be a business owner. Like, let's just do it. Let's just see how it goes. And
so almost like distancing yourself from the failure of doing it kind of helped. Because if you screw it up, like, obviously the course is wrong, rather than saying like, I suck.
Well, I mean, I didn't even care about, I wasn't even viewing that as failure at all, because I was like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen with a cold call? Like, I've got 50 people on this Google Doc.
True.
Like, even if I get 100% no's, like, okay, I'll just try something different. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about that aspect of it. It was more just the nerves of just speaking to people and just like, what do I say? Or like,
oh, okay.
And
yeah, interesting.
Just like, what if I sound weird on the phone? Or I didn't really care about the failure
Right.
aspect of it too much at all.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I've always been more of an extrovert.
Yeah.
And what would sort of draw me back was the end result. Like, oh, what if I just screw this up? And when you think, like, literally you don't know this person. Like, nothing will happen. But something about, like, the end result just not being good, and you're like, oh, then you're going to be disappointed about it, and then it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Like, that in itself makes it kind of like scary for me. But it's interesting to hear from your perspective. But then obviously, like your first cold call and you'd land in-person meeting and then you convert them as a client.
Yeah,
That
I
should
think that
build
I think that was
confidence.
actually kind of a lucky intro into it as well, because that gave me like, it was literally the first cold call that I ever did.
Yeah,
and it turned
that's
into,
insane.
And it turned into an in-person meeting, and I got that immediate win and that immediate confirmation. So that gave me a huge confidence boost that definitely carried throughout. Like,
Right.
and the meeting went better than I thought it would as well. It's
Yeah.
like, so that having that experience, because so much of business and entrepreneurship is obviously just mental mindset, and you need momentum and you need positive confirmation and validation to keep you going. And so having that and viewing that as a win, yeah, definitely helped me out with doubling down on that strategy.
Yeah, 100%, man. So from that point, so you now have got your first client. Now, like, how did you even, you decided on real estate agents because
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's one of the real niches that are really present in Australia
Yeah.
that is out there. How did you then go, like, I'm going to pitch them lead gen? And then after your first client, what was the delivery like? And what did you do to make sure that you, like, kept them happy and kept them around?
Well, I was more in a mindset of like, just start and I'll figure it out. And so
Okay.
I had, like, when I signed the first client, I had never even logged into Facebook Ads Manager. And
Holy shit.
And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what I was going to do at all. I was just like, and that was like one of the things that they kind of talked about in the in the courses was just start selling, and probably not the way that I did it, where you actually had no plans, but that's actually what I did. I was like, let's just sell the first client, and then once I've got them in, like, I don't want to waste time. Like, it can't be that hard, and it probably won't take me that long, and I don't want to waste time putting together a perfect strategy for a service when I'm not actually in the trenches, like doing things for a real client. So I was like, just gonna get this client in, and then I'll figure it out once I've got them on board. And I purposefully, like, had cheap pricing and was very transparent and genuine with all of the first clients that I work with, that it's a new business, like, this is something that I'm just implementing. And one thing that I had on my side as well is that this was early days of Facebook being popular for small and local businesses to be implementing in the first place. So people were like, all of the conversations that I was having with business owners was not, how are you better than the next agency? It was, why should I be running ads on Facebook in the first place? And why like, it was just the opportunity, in offers and things like that. We talk about like new opportunities and having a unique mechanism and all this stuff. The Facebook itself was the new opportunity, was the unique mechanism, and that's, Facebook essentially sold itself and sold the service, and that was all my pitch was about, was selling the opportunity of Facebook, not specifically
You as an agency.
us as an agency, and the technical side of what we're going to be doing for them on the back end. So the first version of I always knew that I was going to do lead gen, because that's what the different agency courses taught to provide. And then the first version of the service that I did was an ebook, a free ebook strategy, a free seller's guide that I just made on Canva. And
So that's a homeowner would see an ad for a free ebook.
Yeah.
They would click on it. In exchange for their information, they would get the email downloaded. So the ebook downloaded, so they get an ebook, and the real estate agent gets the details, and they can just ring them again, right? Yeah. Cool.
That's it. Yeah, so it's just like 7 steps to sell your home for top dollar for Kingscliff homeowners, because that was where the first client was, and that was it. Yeah, and it was literally just Facebook ads to a Google sheet, and the leads just went on a Google sheet, and the deliverable was essentially just, I'm running the ads for them, I made the ads, and then they had this Google sheet where leads show up on there every now and then, and that was it. And I kept them for probably like 10, 11 months.
Yeah, holy, okay.
And yeah, then the next few clients, like, I worked with a decent variety of different clients. I worked with some people that they weren't like seller leads, they weren't like traditional real estate agencies. They were like selling new projects and
like project management type stuff. Yeah,
they were doing like townhouses, like house and land packages, and did some like buyer lead generation for those types of people. But it always been mostly residential real estate agents, and then also have like done some random work with people, like paid ads for client acquisition for people that do high ticket fitness coaching. I've worked with like 8-figure e-com brands that do women's health supplements.
Oh wow.
I've worked with like pet product e-com companies that do like harnesses and leads and pet products. So I've done a fair bit of stuff outside of the realm of real estate, as well as I was like before we really established ourselves, and that was our core client base, just testing the waters with different things. I've worked with people that have 8-figure info product companies building like back-end automations for their marketing teams and things like that. So I've done a fair bit of stuff that's more like technical, hands-on marketing, and I think that that's honestly, you know, where some of my strong suits is in entrepreneurship, is just like actually just technical marketing and being a good marketer.
Right.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. And taking that, you know, to where you are right now, where you went from your first client paying you $1,000 a month, you're now doing over like 80 to 120K every month in revenue. So you're clearly one of the cases of a new guy finding a way to make money online, but then he's actually made it work. And it's been active for what, 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah, well, like if I started in 2018, I probably wouldn't say it was a proper business until the end of 2019. So, yeah, close to 6 years, 5.5 years.
Yeah, right. So 5-6 years. So what do you think is the main difference between agencies that work and make it versus the countless agencies that don't?
I would say definitely a few things. I would say, like, first of all is not giving up. Like, that's such an obvious cliche business statement and advice, but I think one of the main reasons why, like, I remember looking back, you know, the types of things that you would see people selling courses on that people would always call a scam is like trading and forex and all of these different things that people would always like. I just remember being younger and people saying, "Oh, like, don't try trading. Like, you can't make money with that." But now, like, the way that I view business is, you know, think about like high-paying careers. If you're going to be a lawyer, if you're going to be, you know, a consultant at a big 3 firm, and, you know, have any kind of high multi-6-figure year salary, like, think about the time and the trajectory of how long it takes to get their credentials to get to that earning potential in the first place. Whereas the introduction that people get into online business is, you know, this 12-year-old made $60,000 in his first 40 days and, you know, start a side hustle, and everyone treats it like, goes into everything with such a short-term mindset, thinking that you can get crazy results in a short time frame and treating it like a side hustle to begin with. Whereas if you look at any other entrepreneur or business owner starting any other form of like traditional business, like opening up a cafe or, you know, a tradie opening up a plumbing business, you know, and how much more seriously and invested you're taking that business. If you're a tradesman, you're spending $20,000-$30,000 on tools. You're getting a car. You're getting signs and things made up. You're creating websites. If you're a cafe owner, you're, you know, signing up to a 5-year commercial lease. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a fit out. You're putting multiple people on full-time salaries. You're way more bought in. You're way more invested. You're taking on way more risk, and you're like putting yourself in a situation where it has to genuinely work. So I think that is the first thing, is that people just aren't taking their business seriously enough, where they end up putting in the amount of effort that it actually takes to make it win. And as a default, they don't see it through long enough to make it work. And so, yeah, I think like I was in a position where I started it while I was at university. And I feel like most people that are in uni, you have that general mindset that you feel like you're doing something productive enough to satisfy like your role in society, where you're like, I'm a student, like, so it's fine that I'm not doing anything else because I'm a student. And so you don't have that general pressure of, I don't need to be a business owner right now, I don't need to be working full time because I'm at uni. And so I got to kind of dip my toe in the water when there wasn't that much pressure. And I think that's a good, if you're in a position where you can create an environment like that, because it can be very hard starting a business when you're working full time, or you're stressed with bills, or you've got financial stress, or like it's something that has to work, because it's not fun when business is all about like it has to be making money right now. And it's hard to make. It's like a lot of businesses, as anyone knows, you're not profitable. It doesn't make serious money that you can support a family off of, that you can live off for very long at all. And so the fact that I kind of got to be a bit more stress-free and playful with it, and I could just like take courses at my own time, and I was studying uni at full time, but it wasn't like business isn't that intensive of a degree, like it wasn't that hard. So it was pretty much part-time capacity. So I think that's the first thing, is just like how seriously you're actually taking your business, and what's your time horizon of what you're willing to commit to making this version of a business work. Not that you should never, like, I think there's also a fine line where some people are too stubborn with the direction that they're going in their business, and don't pivot and don't change direction when they're getting lots of signs that whatever you're doing right now isn't working. But I think, to answer the question why most people fail, it's they're not taking it seriously enough, and they're not seeing it through for long enough. That's the first thing.
How do you know if they're just beating a dead horse and this is just not going to go anywhere, but just being stubborn with it, versus they're actually like not giving up on it? Because it's a fine line. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think if you've been doing anything for longer than a year and you're not making at least like low 6 figures in revenue, then that's a sign.
Right.
So before a year, I would say, I think a year is a good time frame for any business, where it's like if you've done it for a year, like that's a good level of, and you've been seriously working on it for a year, not just like half-assing it. That's a good barrier to entry to go, okay, it's either you, or it's the business, or it's something in between.
So if you can if you can get close to that 100K mark after 1 year fully putting your effort into it, then you're on the right track.
Yeah.
But if you're still not able to get that, it might be a sign that you're not working on it.
And I think like in general, that question of, is this the right thing? Is this the right opportunity? Is this the right business model? Am I beating a dead horse? Like that is honestly one of the hardest questions that any entrepreneur has to ask. And like some of it comes down to just like your personal conviction in your vision. Mm-hmm. And then it comes down to experience, and like the longer that you're in business, the more you learn, the more clarity that you get around what are good ideas and what are bad ideas. And then who you surround yourself with, who you have access to, getting mentors, getting people that you can bounce ideas off, getting other perspectives, people to tell you like, what are you doing? Like I was listening to a podcast recently with Quasi. He's like a mindset dude that's been in the space for a while, and came up through Sam Ovens, and he did a podcast with
Sam Ovens,
with Arlen Moore. And he said like a good question to ask some of your closest friends is, what would be the obvious thing for me to do? And like I feel like that's such a good question to just like get other people's perspective in your life to go, because I feel like me thinking about that for like my close friends and family members, it's pretty easy to come up with like what you think would be the best idea for someone else to do, but with yourself, you obviously don't have that perspective all the time. And so I feel like that's just like a good little nugget and takeaway for anyone. Just go like, ask your friends if you're in business, or ask people around you, like ask them like, what would be the obvious thing for me to do, and just get some different ideas. Because a lot of it is just context and clarity, and getting support from people around you.
Yeah, that is a really good nugget. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to be asking people like, what is the most but it also depends on who you're asking.
Depends on who it is.
Right?
I think it has to be people that you respect, people that you actually trust their advice, and that they know you well enough to know your context in your situation. Because
someone could just be like, I think you should quit, man.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
No, it would have to be, you'd want to be selective with who you choose to ask that to, for sure. But other things, just like practical, because obviously that's like very high level. It's like, whatever, don't give up. But practical things for starting for growing an agency is like a very typical piece of advice that goes over most people's head, that is easy to listen to but hard to implement, is never let the calendar be empty. Always sales is number one priority. Mm-hmm. But I think like so many people struggle with when you're in business for the first time, and your daily schedule, your workload, what you're choosing to spend your time on is completely up to you. And for me, like, and what a lot of people struggle with is having the self-discipline to hold yourself accountable and control your own workload and control your time, and like actually working on the things that need to be worked on. And because we pop out of an environment where how we allocate our time is completely controlled by external factors. You go through school, you go through university, your timetable's set up for you, you do that, you work random jobs, and you show up for a certain time, you leave. Like that, everything about work is based on external accountability. And it's like, shit, I got to get to that lecture, or I have to show up to this thing because they're marking my attendance. Whereas in business, it all comes down to you. And so, and then one of the things that people struggle with is like, okay, if it's up to me, then how do I choose what do I spend my time on? What do I prioritize? It's the uncertainty around, am I working on the right thing? And so if you always make sales a number one priority and have like a baseline performance and like just base KPIs, like if I'm having this amount of sales calls on the calendar every single month, then at least we're not going backwards, and we can't fail if we're scheduling this amount of sales calls on a monthly basis. That lesson took me way longer than I would have liked to learn, but it's the lifeblood of any of our types of businesses. If you're selling done for you services, if you're selling consulting services, you're not making money if you're not speaking to people and asking for their credit card information and selling something. Just like, Hormozy just puts it really simple. It's just like, ask strangers for money. It's like, that's fundamentally at the end of the day, that's what is the leading indicator of our businesses, is like how many times per day, per week, per month are you asking strangers for money? And so, but it's not easy getting sales calls booked with ideal clients, people that you actually want to be working with, people that will give you money. So that's by far the number one focus. Then it's like switching your priority to, once you solve client acquisition, to building good services, keeping clients, client retention, actually getting good results. Because a lot of people in the agency space have kind of flash in the pan business models where you do someone's course or program, you figure out client acquisition, you scale up quickly, and then you don't know operations, you don't know how to run a business, you don't know how to keep clients, and then that kind of trajectory can be disheartening. And so any of these businesses, like the different levels of scale that you get to comes with, there's different, if you think about like a video game, there's different final bosses at different stages of the business model. At first, it's just like, getting like, people talk about 10K a month. It's like getting there's a lot of things you have to figure out. Then it's like 40 to 60K per month. And that's like kind of figuring out the scaling client acquisition hump. And then it's operations and having a good product. And that is another challenging thing to solve. And so I think those are the main biggest hurdles. I think 0 to 10K is just like, that's a good filter for weeding out the newbies, the low level people that like, you can't like, if you're doing 10K a month, you've crossed that, 6-figure run rate mark. And if you get there, you've forced to figure out how to sell clients, you've forced to figure out how to get sales calls booked on the calendar. You've been through some courses, you've figured out how to use softwares, how to onboard people, speaking to clients.
Like, you've got the goods. If you can do 10K 1 month, you got the goods. What you're saying.
And then 50 to 60K, like, you have to figure out, scale, you have to figure out, getting some team in place, you're doing more sales, you're probably spending money on paid ads, you're, juggling, planning ahead with finances, if you're thinking about cost of customer acquisition, and then, figuring out operations. Like, they're all completely different skills. They're all completely different areas of a business. So, I think those are the great filters in the agency space.
Awesome. And speaking of the agency space in general, there's this whole new thing going around, like SMMAs are dead. Like, SMMAs are a thing of the past. Like, they're all like, it's some like new level of business now. And so there's a lot of doom and gloom around SMMAs and just agencies in general. So what's your viewpoint on that? What do you think is actually happening?
Yeah, I think the only people saying that are using it in the same way that magazines and newspapers have headlines for getting attention. The people saying these things are YouTubers trying to get attention to sell courses. And so I think the gurus will say one thing, the market will say another thing. And I think if you are getting all of your advice and your the theses that you're making decisions off to run your business straight from gurus selling high ticket programs, then that's not the best place to be creating your worldview from. The market should be where you get your feedback from, which is like, what are the potential customers in your niche, in your market, actually saying, and what's the feedback that you're actually getting from the real people that are going to give you money. That's what actually matters. And so a lesson that I've learned is watch what people do, not what they say. It's like, if one person is making all of their money from selling courses, then what their actions are going to correlate with is to sell more courses, which is create content that's going to get more clicks, that's going to get more views. And selling courses and coaching programs is more about being an influencer than it is about being a good operator and a good business owner and being a true expert in that field. So people talk about this in the e-commerce space as well. It's like, is dropshipping dead? It's like, well, are people going to stop buying things online anytime soon? No, of course. Yes, it's more challenging. Yes, it's more competitive. As any industry matures more, it gets more sophisticated. Your competitors get more advanced, and you have to be better to win and to be able to take the same chunk of that pie. So I think we're in a stage right now where, and compare that to the agency business model, is fundamentally what we're doing is we're helping businesses with client acquisition. That's like the fundamental function of what any agency service does. If you're in the e-com niche, you're helping e-com brands get more customers. If you're in local business lead gen, you're helping local businesses get more customers and clients. And there's never going to be a time where businesses don't need more customers. Like any business owner, like if you ask them, do you want to grow, or do you want to go out of business? Obviously, everyone wants to grow. So there's always going to be a need for businesses to get more customers and clients. Therefore, there's always going to be a need for marketing agency services that help with that. But it changes, obviously. It evolves, and it gets more efficient. The niches get more saturated. There becomes more competitors. It gets more advanced, and your competitors get more sophisticated. So by no means is anything dead whatsoever, but there's obviously natural changes in the industry, as there is with anything, that you have to adapt, you have to get better, you have to do things a little bit differently. So, I would say 90% of what you see out there of like saying any model is dead comes from a place of that they're trying to position a variation of that business model as their unique mechanism to sell as a course or a coaching program. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense as well, because all the guys that I've seen saying it are now suggesting some other thing as like, this is the actual thing.
But it's still a version of an agency.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's fundamentally the same thing.
Yeah, they're just creating a different name for a slightly different version of the thing.
Right.
To stamp their own name against something to have a point of difference.
Yeah. And now, like what you've mentioned is very true, because when you started off, you were trying to tell people like, hey, Facebook is a thing, and then you can sell people on it. But now when you get on sales calls with, potential clients, and they're asking like, why should I go with your agency? I've had bad experience with another agency, and I've tried 3 agencies before this. Like, what's going on? Like, now the landscape is so much bigger in the sense that there's so many more competitors, because the access to this information is like very easy, and you can pay, like the max you have to do is like pay $1,000 and get a course, and you have the tools to be able to do this. There's so many people doing this now. Now the challenges are slightly different. You can probably admit like that it's much harder now than 100%. It was way better. And you probably see this in your own business as you went along. So if someone is starting an agency now in 2024, what's your advice to them, considering how things are and how things aren't as easy anymore?
Yeah. So I think like the way that I think very logically, I think very like systems based. I think about like, variables and like what levers you can pull, what's within your control. And so the main levers that you can pull to affect how easy or hard it will be to acquire customers and clients, comes down to your offer and your positioning and the way that you're attracting clients. So I think a longer term strategy is increasing your status in the marketplace. The higher your perceived status, the easier it is to acquire customers, because the higher your status, the more people trust you. And so we see this as kind of like a symptom of the whole guarantee strategy, because like most of the courses out there teach beginners in the marketing agency space to create very guarantee heavy based offers with crazy guarantees.
Yep.
And the reason that they do that is because when you have low status in the marketplace, you require something to offset the perceived risk of someone wanting to work with you. And so what we've noticed over the past 2 or 3 years with people like Cole Gordon, with people like Alex Emosi, working with a ton of the market and educating the market on these strategies, is everyone does all these crazy guarantees, and it works for, there's a good time and place for it in the early stages. And so that's like, one good thing that you can do when you're first starting out is do Hermosi's courses, like get familiar with how to create irresistible offers, have some version of a crazy guarantee, and that makes it easy to get clients in the first place. But as time progresses, you want to, like, there's essentially a direct correlation between how crazy and aggressive a guarantee is and what your status is in the marketplace. So it's like guarantees are like a symptom of low status, and not needing a guarantee is a symptom of high status. So like, how do you build status? Well, content, personal branding, marketing assets that you create that increase, if you can, the way that you educate your potential customers and clients will dictate how much of an authority figure they perceive you to be as. So if you've got like a good email list, if you put out good content on Twitter, if you have a good YouTube channel, if you make podcasts like this, then you'll have higher status in the marketplace. But that is not a short-term solution whatsoever. No. That takes time to build up. But that is a good, like, most strategies that are the best at the end of the day aren't quick fixes, and they take time to develop. So having some kind of content, personal branding, being a thought leader, being an expert, actually knowing your shit, that is one of the best ways to build a moat around competition. The next things are just, in terms of like beating competition, I think like being more hyper niched, like instead of just going after the real estate niche or just going after e-com brands, if you're first starting out, like if you have to compare yourself, if you're like someone pitching, if you're competing against another marketing agency that's pitching just e-com brands in general, and you're submitting a proposal and you're submitting a pitch, or trying to get on a sales call saying like, we help e-com brands scale, like we can help you out. Instead of just being a generalized agency, how about you specialize in working with pet products, and you try and get your first 7 to 10 clients in that one hyper specific niche within the general industry, and just be like the GOAT and be really, really good at scaling pet products brands. Because if all the case studies that you're showing, if the ideas that you're presenting are all tailored to that specific type of business, then they're gonna go with you, and it's gonna be easier to sell them. Same with real estate. Like if you were going, that strategy is going after a more hyper niche segment of the market, and then also look at which services that you're selling. So like one of the things that I'm seeing right now is that I think just if you're only offering Facebook and Instagram paid ads as a service, that's one way to get commoditized as a service, because it's the lowest barrier to entry service to be able to offer as an agency, because it's pretty easy to learn Facebook ads. There's so much content out there on it, and it's pretty easy to get results as well. And so because many other people can do it, then you don't have much of a competitive advantage. So, some of the agencies that I've seen have really quick growth curves. They got their momentum from going after a very specific type of client and then focusing on delivering a service that's also not as saturated. So if you're like trying to go into the e-com niche, just doing Facebook and Instagram ads for e-com brands in general, that's going to be pretty competitive. Whereas if you're going after just women's jewelry brands and you're just really good at Google ads, well, that's way more competitive and differentiated and a lot more tailored to that type of business and brand. So if I was in like local business lead gen, I wouldn't just go after real estate agents in general. I might be trying to go after boutique developers, or I might be trying to go after buyers agents, or I might be trying to just go after Gold Coast, like the Gold Coast top performing real estate agents, and get a lot more niche and get a lot more tailored.
Right.
So that's what I've.
So it's all a way of, like, whether it's building a brand or whether it's like adding more elements to your service and whether it's more going very hyper niche, it's all a way to decommoditize yourself and make yourself unique.
Yeah.
And it's either not this or this. Like, it's either like I can have this or I can have something completely different where you're not getting compared between other businesses.
Yeah. I think one of the fundamental variables of any service and any offer is that strategy of having a unique mechanism. And one just psychological rule or principle is that law of shiny object syndrome always plays out, and like the new opportunity, and everyone falls victim to that. Mm-hmm. And regardless of how well of a seasoned business owner you are, everyone always wants to feel like that they're on the cutting edge. Everyone always wants to feel like they're doing the best thing for their business, mm-hmm. and everyone's always, generally open to trying new things if it seems like a good idea and seems like something that they haven't tried. And so a lot of the time when agency owners are getting a lot of pushback and getting compared to other agencies, it's because they look the same and they are presenting and trying to sell something that is relatively the same as everyone else is doing, and they haven't gotten creative and they haven't done much innovating. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because when you're in the early stages of any business model, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You just want to model success. You just want to copy what other people are doing at a small scale, get some traction, and then innovate. So I would say it's a bit of it's definitely a fine line. Like when you're just starting out, you don't need to be dramatically different to
mm-hmm.
get traction, but to get 30, 40, 50, 60K per month, then you need to have some stronger point of difference. But being aware of this going into it is good, so that you know what to be working towards and what to be building on as you're getting momentum in the.
And I've had, like, especially when I first started working with you and sort of getting your mentorship, I've been through both of these things. Yeah. So, but personally for me, I've always found that I get more attention when I do stuff that I'm naturally better at, and that is like naturally different from what the market does. Every time I try to follow some sort of template, I always see my results drop. Mm-hmm. But I also think that's because, when you're doing something that you're naturally more into, you're more invested and 100%. You're more throwing yourself out there. So do you think that's also a big factor in this?
Yeah, I think where that showed up for me is like, obviously focus is one of the biggest challenges and biggest things that most successful entrepreneurs talk about as being like one of the main keys is focus. Just focus on one thing. Like, don't, shiny object syndrome. You don't need 7 streams of income to become a millionaire. You don't need 20 side hustles. You don't need multiple business ventures and all these. You don't need to have your hand in all these different pies. Just like focus on the one thing. And one of the things that I didn't do that well, didn't apply that well with, is bouncing back and forth between doing coaching and doing the agency, because like that's kind of probably one of the first significant shiny objects that show up when you get success in any of these online businesses. If you have a dropshipping store that does well, if you have an agency, you see so many newbie agency owners out there that it's so obvious that they've hit their first 10K months a couple times, and then now they're a YouTuber and they're trying to do the course thing. Right. I had imposter syndrome for a lot longer than that before I felt justified to be able to talk on anything. But once I got to a certain point where I kind of felt like coaching was an option, then I've made a lot of money from coaching, but it in retrospect, I probably should have stayed just working. I should have waited longer and done a bit more of a clean transition and not try and do both at once. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's 2 ways of looking at things with your alignment with your personal interests with business, because you're either going to go down 2 routes, like and there's definitely a balance. You're either that's like essential to your core personality and you're only going to do something that has a lot of alignment with your personal interests and passions, and that's a non-negotiable, and you're just going all in on that, and that is like, you just have to have conviction with that direction. Or there's there's a lot more businesses out there that aren't fun, that aren't sexy, that are relatively boring, where there's roles within those businesses that you'll enjoy more than others, but there's a lot of things that you have to do that aren't fun, and that your business doesn't always care about your feelings and what you exactly want to be working on. And so I think there's seasons of business where you kind of just have to put your head down, and it's going to suck for a while, and you don't have the option to work on exactly what you want to. But then you obviously, if you're going to have any longevity, then if you just follow that mindset forever, you're going to burn out and you're going to hate running a business. And so something that I did recently, there's like a test online called the wealth dynamics test, where there's like 7 or 9 like wealth dynamics profiles, where it's kind of like doing a bit of a personality test for entrepreneurs, where it asks you like 25, 30 questions, and it will tell you which wealth dynamics profile you are, and give you a bit of a breakdown of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, like what types of roles you work best in, like what types of activities put you in flow state. Gives you examples of different business archetypes of people, business moguls that are your same wealth dynamics profile, that you can kind of model some of their career and trajectory off. And so I think that, long story short, there's a time and place and definitely a stage in every business where you shouldn't be thinking about having the option of whether or not what you're doing is exactly your personal joy and your personal fun. But you want to have clarity around, you want to lean into your talents, and you want to lean into your strengths, and know ideally what that should be in the future. And so like, I'm not a good operator. I am not the best at operations. I'm good at marketing strategy. I'm good at like vision. I'm good at client acquisition, paid ads, sales, marketing, all that stuff. But I'm not the best at operations, back end, fulfillment. And so that's like, over the past year and a half, one of the journeys I've been going on of educating myself around that, focusing on team, because any business like is essentially just a group of good people, and you don't need to wear all the hats. And a good little anecdote that I heard a long time ago is a lot of problems are solved by asking. It's not the who, it's not the how, it's the who. Is that the right way around? It's not the how, it's the who. It's not how to, if you're thinking like, how do I solve this problem? How do I get more clients? How do I run paid ads? How do I get results for this client? It's not how do I solve that? It's who can I find that can already do that thing. A lot of growing a business is just detaching yourself from the mindset of thinking that you need to solve everything. And it's just more about, how can I find the right people that can help me do this?
Right.
Yeah.
So repeat that for the audience. It's not the how, it's the who.
The who.
Yeah, okay.
So not in all situations, obviously, but it's just like, I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs in general end up having to overcome is, when you first start out, you are doing everything, and then you feel like you're the only one that can solve certain problems. You're the only one that can do anything in your business as well as you want, and just having that detachment of starting to offload things to other people, and not carrying the mental load and responsibility of feeling like you have to solve every single problem, and instead asking yourself, instead of how can I solve this, it's who can help me solve this. Like, another good kind of quote along those lines from Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, is, when you're thinking about delegating and outsourcing, like, one of the biggest challenges that business owners have is just letting go of someone else doing that task, worrying if they're going to do it right. And one of the quotes that he has in there is 80% done is 100% awesome. Just meaning if someone does it 80% as good as you would have done it, but you didn't have to do anything, then that's 100% awesome. Because you didn't have to do it. Sweet. And so it's, and Hormozi talks about, usually, like, us as business owners, we're usually naturally higher performers and have higher standards for work ethic and quality of work being done. And because we are more of an A player type person within typical businesses, we have unrealistic expectations of what we would expect from employees. And he usually says, like, it usually would take like 2 to 3 normal people to do the job of one, like, A player entrepreneur. And so that's something that I know holds a lot of business owners back from growing their team and scaling as quickly as they probably could have, is let going of those expectations and delegating sooner rather than later.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So speaking of, like, going, from the putting that entrepreneurial hat on, who do you think should go and become an agency owner versus who do you think should go that high-paid, high-ticket freelancer route? Because they're very different roles, but they often look kind of similar at the start.
Yeah, I mean, I would say do this wealth dynamics quiz, because there's very specific personality types that correlate towards different types of business models.
Can you give an example? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's one that's like the creator or the star, where like you're like if you're a creator and a star, like you're always wanting to be making things, and you're wanting to be like front and center. You're wanting to be like the star of the show. And so people that are those types of character types, then one thing that is inevitable that aligns with those versions of business models, if you're doing high ticket coaching courses and things like that, is essentially being a talking head, personal brand, and being on camera a lot, and having conviction in your ideas, and thinking of yourself as a thought leader and an expert, and putting that out there all the time, and being a bit extroverted. And so if you're not like that naturally, then it's going to be very hard to run one of those types of businesses without, people do it, and like people do coaching programs and stuff where they don't have content and it's just paid ads, but it's a lot harder. It's definitely a lot harder. And so mine, for example, is the Lord, which is essentially like kind of like a landlord, or the way that they picture it, or that they position it, is John D. Rockefeller was a lord. I think Andrew Carnegie, a few of these types of people, where you're kind of like a middleman. You're like very numbers based, like analytics. You more want to be behind the scenes, and you don't necessarily care as much about being front and center, or being like a Steve Jobs type character, just like kind of innovative, like loud, and wanting to create the next big fancy thing. You just want to put yourself in between something that's already making money and just make something a bit more efficient.
Yep.
And so that's like kind of like what we do in the agency. I don't think I have perfect alignment with that at the moment, where we're not out there being a real estate agent, we're not selling homes. We're just like improving a process in the sales process of real estate agents, and helping them do what they already do just a lot more efficiently and be more profitable. So yeah, I think there's so many different versions of business models that you can do out there. Like, I think with an agency, some of the things that people might not expect is, you have to talk to people a lot. You have to communicate. You have to communicate a lot. You have to be good at communication. You have to deal with clients. You have to do sales calls. If you're not the type of person that is good at speaking with people, and you don't have good communication, and you can't like present yourself professionally and articulate yourself, then you're going to have trouble running an agency, because most of it comes down to your communication and speaking to people. You have to speak to people to get clients on board. You have to speak to them to keep them. Whereas, if you're more just wanting to be behind the scenes, then maybe be better off just being a really good media buyer and being like a fractional CMO or something like that, or doing copywriting, or doing drop shipping, and just being behind the scenes. Yeah. So yeah, I think those are some general things that you could correlate with different personality types and what version of the business to go for.
Awesome. So just tie it up, just figure out your personality first, and then model the way you're going to work after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, just to wrap it all up, bro, we definitely need to be doing one of these again. There's like 100 more questions that we're going to ask, I'm sure people are going to ask way more. But just for you personally, what is your next, big milestone, big goal that you're working towards? What's on the horizon for you?
Trying to get an exit on the agency. It's something that I'm going through right now, working towards. And then honestly, like, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and part of, I just want to take some time off to figure exactly what that's going to be, because I think that in order to get a clear, like, changing any direction or like figuring out what the next big project is shouldn't be a small decision whatsoever. And yeah, I think I would want at least like 3 months of just not having any obligations, just being able to chill out and just figure out, okay, like, what is the next thing that I actually want to be doing that has alignment with the things that I'm interested in and is a good high-level business opportunity. So I think one of the things that I'll always have some kind of connection to this general online business space, because I've been in it for so long. I've developed so many really good skills, and that's the great thing about this space, is that you develop so many very good skills that can be applied to so many different versions of businesses, and like that, those options are good, but it can be also a bit overwhelming because there is just so many options. So whether or not I'm doing like, high level rev share deals with other people that have digital products, or I really enjoy writing copy, building funnels, whether I'm working with people doing that on the back burner, and I don't actually exactly know what the next like big main business is gonna be. There's definitely always going to be some versions of digital products and coaching programs that I'm doing. I definitely see myself being active and doing YouTube or doing social media in general long term. But I honestly don't have 100% clarity right now what the next big main because my long-term goal is, if I'm going to be doing anything, like I want to be working towards a net worth of about $25 to $30 million. And so anything that I'm doing has to be at that level of being able to produce that opportunity if I was to sell that business.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see what you get up to, man.
Yeah.
And hopefully on another podcast, not too very far away, we'll chat about your next sort of milestones and even more questions that the people want to get answered. But
absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on, bro.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, it was a good chat.
Awesome.
Thank you.